Today on the Pitchbook podcast, Zach is pitching Dare to Lead by Brene Brown, and I am pitching Becoming a Supple Leopard by Dr. Kelly Starrett. Batter up! All right, Zach, you kind of chuckled when I told you what I was pitching today. Are you prepared for this? Let me show the audience if you're looking at our YouTube. Oh, where are we at? There we go. Can you see it?
Yeah, you're attracted to the most interesting titles and names and colors and shapes. You're very eclectic.
Let me just show you. This is like a reference book more, so it's more like
what is
if you're
it?
having, so it's the ultimate, this is the subtitle here. The ultimate guide to resolving pain, preventing injury, and optimizing athletic performance. So let me just tell you the quick story
Okay.
of this book.
Yeah, and I want to hear how you found it too.
I listened to a podcast from Kyle Hunt. He's kind of a fitness coach out of North Carolina, I believe, and he does a podcast about fitness or whatever, and I listen to it and weightlifting and stuff like that. And anyway, he reads books too, like we do. And I think once a year he says, here's all the books I read that I recommend or whatever. And sometimes they're, business books, sometimes they're, athletic books or weight training or whatever. And this is one of the first books he recommended. I think it was last year or something. And it's basically more of a reference book for like, you got a little pain in your shoulder or something bugging you in your neck. You just kind of look up in the book like, oh, or like, for example, well, here's something with my hamstring. Here's some stretches you should do. Grab a lacrosse ball and lay on it and have a partner come and like step on your leg so it goes even deeper. Back when I first read this book, I had a little tennis elbow, and he's got just a couple things that I can't remember what he calls it, but there's like a almost like a rubber wrap that you can wrap around to like tighten your thing and then do different stretches with it on, and it's pretty helpful. So it's kind of like almost like a physical therapy type of reference book.
Okay.
So if something's bugging you, your neck or your shoulder, here's kind of some of the things you could do. One things that I think was really helpful is my tricep was bugging me once, and there's a thing where you just go and you basically rest your arm as much as you can and then push it down on like a bar, like on a bench bar. And just random weird stuff like that this doctor has, kind of either invented or perfected or whatever. And so it's kind of a reference book. Obviously, I haven't read the whole thing. I've just kind of said, hey, this is what's bugging me. Let me look up that muscle group and what we should do about it. So anyway, just it's something a little different. I thought I'd bring to the table. It's just got something. If something's bugging Cammie's neck or whatever, I'll like, okay, let's go grab this weird little ball that it's going to hurt your neck for a minute, but make it feel better. And anyway, yeah, it's just it's cool.
It's kind of interesting. I recently started working out with my neighbor, and the guy is he is strong in every muscle group. It's not like just biceps or tries. And I was like, why don't I come work out with you at 6 a.m. every morning, 6 days a week? Wow. I just want to see what happens.
Okay.
What kind of transformation will I experience?
When did you start doing this?
2 weeks ago.
Nice. How's it been?
It's been good. I roll out of bed at 5:50. He lives just Sean Watkins, he came on the podcast last year.
Yep.
So I roll out of bed, go over there at 6, and then he just works me over. And every day is a different exercise. I don't know what we're going to do. I don't know what to anticipate. Are we doing legs? Are we doing some kind of cardio? It's like my muscles every day, a different group is hurting.
Yep.
But he has this machine, and I'm getting back into your book here, where you lay on your stomach. So you're at an angle, like your legs are hanging over the edge of the edge of a table.
Okay.
You put this strap around the back of your ankles, and it's like a pulley system that you pull the back of your legs up, but the weight swings your legs forward. So it feels like it's pulling on your spine. Does that make sense?
Kind of, yeah.
I'll have to show it.
Sounds dangerous. It sounds like it hurts.
Well, the first time I did it, I was trying to slow down, and the weights came back and hit me in the shins.
Oh.
Like on the comeback. So it's like this this pendulum where you're swinging your legs but it's pulling on your spine.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, who invented this?
Right.
And he said the guy that invented it had 3 compacted discs in his lower spine. And they said, you're
Mm-hmm.
going to need all these operations and all these surgeries. And he said, I'm going to see if I can figure out a way to kind of uncompact these discs in my back. So he came up with this machine that just uses this weight system, and it basically just kind of elongates or pulls your spine back out, because we're always doing
Nice.
compression squats
Yeah.
and things
Yeah.
that are crushing your back. This machine pulls it the other way. And so it strengthens your lower back, but it also helps to decompress some of that pressure.
Cool.
But I thought, this is kind of what you're talking about. If you've got shoulder pain, here's some
Mm-hmm.
exercises.
They're
Do you
not.
need weights to do
No, no,
them,
no, no, no.
or
They're
are
they're
they
more
stretches
like
or
yeah, they're more like stretches, or he calls them smash. A lot of stuff's called smash. So like you'll lay on like a lacrosse ball, which is pretty, rigid. Like maybe just under your shoulder blade, and then just lay on it with all your weight to kind of, it's, imagine like a really deep massage, but like gravity and your body weight is doing it. Sometimes again though, you'll have a partner that comes along and maybe stands on your arm to give you even more pressure into it. So
okay.
if something's hurting, you let me know, and we'll look it up and get back to the folks on the podcast. See if you can become a supple leopard.
So so what's been like your favorite motion or exercise?
uh, the one that probably helped me the most is the wrap around my arm for tennis elbow. Actually, I think it was golfer's elbow that I had, which is on
Hmm.
the inside of your arm. Um, and it's super weird. Like you just wrap this like the bands that you exercise with, like those stretchy bands that are kind of thick or whatever.
Yeah.
It's kind of like that, but you wrap it kind of tight, and then you kind of go through some of the motions, some of these little exercises that he has, and that just seemed to help quite a bit. 'Cause there's just a lot of pressure. I don't know why, but there's a lot of pressure on your arm, and you're kind of doing some of the things. I don't know. That's probably been the most helpful. Like I said, the one that was interesting to me that kind of helped was the triceps on the bar, where you're just resting on the bar and letting your arm kind of, I don't know, weight,
Hmm.
like gravity. Like I said, gravity's kind of doing the job for you to kind of
Yeah.
get some of those areas. But yeah, if you have something that's nagging, I should say, uh, then let me know and we'll try to find something in here. But
Well,
yeah,
we're
I mean, it's
definitely,
it's like I said, it's a reference book. I don't really know what to give it other than maybe a triple or home run or something. It just kind of depends on what you need. But as I start to age and
yes.
the old muscles and things get tighter, I find it pretty helpful. And just kind of a book I have around, and whenever I need, I just look up whatever the muscle is and try to fix it. So
I feel like I should give that to my clients when they retire. Just here's a nice dinner and a book, by the way, so that you can
yeah,
still have motion. For those of
yeah,
you that don't know, Matt is just an insane pickleball player, so he needs all that range
I
and
do.
motion.
I do. I need all the help I can get as I start to age, as I get older.
Oh,
Can't
that's
believe
awesome.
how old I'm turning this year. So anyway, all right. So that's it. Again, kind of a weird one, but I just it's something different to, you know, keep it fresh here. So all right, that's what I
Supple,
got.
supple leopard. I
Becoming
love it.
becoming a supple leopard, the ultimate guide to resolving pain, preventing injury, and optimizing athletic performance. I should say at the first half of the book is kind of how to do weightlifting it with proper form. So
Hmm.
there is a kind of an element where he's like, look, if you're gonna do squats, make sure you do them this way that they're correctly, so you're not messing up your back or knees or whatever.
Yep.
So that is part of the book too. But then again, I think the second half is more like, hey, fix how to fix this injury or prevent things or whatever. So
That
obviously the guy's really intelligent and knows what he's talking about. So it's a good book.
that lends to one of my favorite quotes by Neil A. Maxwell. He said, "First direction, then velocity.
Nice.
Figure out the motion first, or the direction that you're going, and then apply the weight or apply the speed. But you got to figure out that first." I think a lot of times we just come into something 100%. It's
Right.
maybe we're not doing the form or
And
motion
I
right.
I was thinking that today when I was playing pickleball. Like I'm like, okay, I don't need to hit it 100 miles an hour. I just got to get it in bounds first. Like you know what
Right.
I mean? Quit hitting it out like by a million miles.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
anyway. All right, what do you got for us?
Awesome. All
Dare to
right.
lead.
This is a book that I found on the Libby app a
Nice.
couple months ago. I was working on my chicken coop. So it's funny, when I read a book, I remember where I was
Yeah. Oh yeah.
when I was reading it. Isn't that strange? Sometimes
Yeah.
it's on my couch or in the car.
Hmm.
This one I was working on this project for several hours, and so I'd turn on Dare to Lead by Brene Brown, excuse me. And Brene is an accomplished writer, accomplished speaker, business development, talent growth within your company.
Isn't she like a psychiatrist too, or something? Or
I think
she's
so.
something
That's
research
yeah,
research
that's yep.
psychologist or something? Yeah.
Yeah, that's kind of where she started, and then got more into like the organizational
Yeah.
leadership,
Yeah.
helping people to excel in their teams and their
Right.
companies. And I think she's been retained by several CEOs and
Yeah.
executives. So she knows what she's talking about and has a team of her own that she's leading. So a lot of the examples that she shares in the book are more about her, which I thought was awesome. She was very vulnerable in the book. Like the whole book is about her messing up, making things right. She just shares a lot of personal experiences, which you don't hear a lot. You always
Well,
hear
now you're
about,
making me nervous because you told me you're going to ask me questions, and I don't know if I have to be vulnerable or not. I
oh,
wasn't prepared. I'm not prepared for that.
you're going to vulnerability village here right
All
now.
right.
That's where we're
Good.
heading.
Good.
So 5 key things. I try to just draw five key principles from the books that I'm reading if I can. So the first one, she talks about how vulnerability is a strength as a leader. And you would think that most leaders need to be tough, they need to be gritty, they can't show any weakness. And that's kind of off-putting, I think, for a lot of people.
Mhm.
I much prefer to have a leader that's open to improvement
Mhm.
and is vulnerable, like, hey, this isn't working out, or I took us down this wrong path. We need to course correct. And so she just talked a lot about how being vulnerable is a strength and actually strengthens your organization because it allows for improvement and iteration. Um, the second thing she talks about is clear is kind, unclear is unkind. And it reminded me of this story. So early in my career, I went to this presentation, and it was the first time that I was going to be presenting. So I'd been kind of shadowing my boss, and she had been showing me how the presentation should flow, how it should go with these clients. And so we go to like one of my small clients that I was assigned to, and she's like, "Okay, you're going to run the whole thing." So I had these books back, but this is before iPads or Zoom. We just had like these thick packets, and we would hand everyone a packet at the beginning of the meeting. It's kind of funny
Mhm.
thinking about it now. We had tabs for each little section. I'm like, okay, now tab one.
Yeah.
Well, there's like 10 people in this meeting. And so I just put all the books into a box. I walk in the room, I've got the box, I take the books out of the box, I hand them out, we go through the presentation. And I thought I thought it went pretty well. I'm like, I think it went okay. There were smiles all around the room, and everybody got the information that they needed. And I said, "How do you think I did?" And she said, "Ditch the box." And I was like, "Oh, that kind of like cut me a little bit." I said, "Okay, what else?" She's like, "Well, there's this other thing that you kept saying during the presentation, which technically isn't right. Here's what you should have said." So she just and I was just starting to work with her as
Mhm.
my boss. And I was like, okay, all right, this kind of hurts a little bit.
Mhm.
But now, after working with her for over 15 years, it's just how she is. She's
Mhm.
very direct, she's very clear. And she said this same thing to me years ago. She said, Zach, if I want you to improve, I have to be really clear and I have to be really direct. And she's like, that's how you're showing kindness to somebody, is just telling them the truth.
Mhm.
If I just continue to mask it, I don't tell you the truth, you'll continue on struggling and not really getting the kind of clarity you need. So I don't know if you've ever had an experience with that where maybe a manager was really direct with you that it was actually
So
helpful.
yeah, I don't want to be redundant. I don't know if we've talked about this before, but I feel like athletes are pretty good at taking feedback. You played some sports in high school. I didn't I played more pickup stuff, but I was an actor in high school, like in the drama club, and I was in all the plays and stuff. And you got really used to getting feedback, hearing feedback from the director. We would also record our scenes or whatever, so we could watch them back and critique ourselves or whatever. So I got very used to hearing, hearing feedback and trying to improve. Anyway, so I don't mind it at all, right? As long as it's coming from someone that cares about what we're trying to accomplish. I've had managers who didn't care, and if they give me feedback and they don't care, it's like, it's it's not very helpful, right? But if somebody truly wants you to improve and is on your side, then I'm fine with it, and I've always am happy to try to get better and improve. So that's just kind of generically what it reminds me of, is like getting feedback at a play. I remember in I hope I still don't do this to this day. I was also on the mock trial team, which in college, and I was more of an actor, not a. So there's like actors that play the witnesses, and then there's um, people that play attorneys, right? Not play.
Okay.
They're
Yeah.
attorneys, and they ask me questions. Since I wasn't a very good attorney, I was an actor. I was more like the actor, like pretending to be. I don't know. One time I was like a scout for like soccer or something like that, and telling how this goalie was amazing or whatever. Anyway, my our political science teacher. Sorry, my computer's went wacky. Um, he would also give us. He was basically like the director of this little miniature weird play, and I remember he would like say, "Matt, don't like smack your lips like why when you talk. Like, what are you doing? Like, it's so distracting." So just little things like that, you just kind of get used to hearing. Like, okay, go, fine, no worries. Because I obviously didn't notice it, and he did. So now I'm paranoid that I'm doing it on the podcast. But anyway, that was a really long answer to yeah. So feedback for myself was not an answer so long. But yeah, does that make sense? Does that help at
Yeah,
all? Like
totally. And I think if you're working with people that want what's best for you, I mean, giving someone feedback like, I don't like the color of your eyes, I can't control that. That's not nice,
yeah, yeah,
But if
yeah,
they say something that's trying to improve your performance, the faster in your career that you can get to a place,
right,
even if they don't artfully say it, if they
right.
say it in an awkward way and it could be construed as something negative, just you have to have this filter where you
Hmm.
filter out the delivery, boil down to the message, analyze that, and say, is that right? And
Yeah,
if it is, you need to integrate that. And I've
yeah.
tried. It's taken me a long time, but I think I'm at a point in my career now where somebody gives me feedback, I'm like I'm doing updates like a computer
Yeah.
does updates.
I remember somebody saying, I don't remember where I heard this, is separate the emotion from the feedback, right? So like
Oh yeah.
if something is, like, oh well shoot, I really tried hard on that. Like, okay, fine. That I that's kind of hurtful, but like what you're saying, like if what they're saying is helpful and true, then let's take it for what it's worth and try to get better. So
Yeah. Take all the ego out of it,
mhm.
filter out the
Take the emotion
delivery.
out. I did have a boss that said, take the emotion out of that.
Yeah.
What do you think about it
Yes.
from there? So
And if I see that on my team where somebody is receiving feedback without ego, I
mhm,
can say there's someone who's going to progress very fast.
for sure.
They just will. It's like they're updating faster than maybe other people on the team,
Mhm.
and it's fun. And today I work with a team of a lot of people like that, where they just are okay with updates, and we give each other feedback all the time. They give it
Yeah.
back to me, and so I thought clear is kind, unclear is unkind. So be clear with your people if you're a manager, and if you're being managed or you're on a team and you're just starting your career, you should seek feedback and integrate it as quickly as you can. All right. A couple
Cool.
other things she talks about is identifying and living by core values that are critical for effective leadership. This I totally agree with. Ray Dalio has a book called Principles for, I think it's called Principles for Life or Principles for Business, or maybe the book's just called Principles. But he talks, and she kind of reiterates the same thing, that you want to distill what are your core values, what are the principles that you're going to conduct your business by. And I'll give an example in my industry, and I'm going to be a little vague here, but there are shortcuts to success. And you'll see people take shortcuts all the time. I'm dealing with a situation right now where we've taken the long, hard road. It's been multiple years. We have I think, a highly credentialed team, and I see this other team come in that we're competing with, but they took a shortcut, and it's not an obvious shortcut that the the client is really perceiving.
Mm-hmm.
And in my mind, I'm like, they took a shortcut to get to to get to the point that they are. Eventually, I think that will be exposed, but you need to have your principles, and sometimes having principles and values is going to take you on the long path. It's not the short path. It's going to be the long path, but I will say it's the most durable, sustaining path when you are driven by principles. Sometimes that means, as you know, Matt, not getting the deal, not closing the
Mm-hmm.
business, and you have to be okay with that, because ultimately you attract clients. You lose clients the same way you gain them. If you gain them we've talked about this. If you gain them with skill, services, value in all the right ways, if a client hires you for those things, you're only going to lose that client to a more skilled, more competent player. And if you're self-iterating, you're self-improving, and you're at the top of your field, you're just not going to lose clients. Uh, but if you are competing on price or competing on shortcuts or not being totally honest with people, and you win clients that way, you're just going to lose them to the better steak dinner, so to
Mm-hmm.
speak. That
Yeah, I
makes
like
sense.
our CEO said something that was pretty profound. I liked. He says, "I'm not going to do a bad deal just to get some money. Like he's not going to hurt the business
Right.
for the future just for a small gain right now." So yeah, it's kind of wise. I don't know. I kind of feel like that kind of goes without saying, but maybe that's just our philosophy. I don't know.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. That's okay. And you want to win clients the right way. There was a great quote I read this week. Sorry, I'm kind of rambling here a little bit, but this book, it got me thinking a lot about my own career and ways that I've learned and mistakes I've made and things I've improved on. But this quote I read earlier this week, I posted it on LinkedIn. It said, the mouse in the trap doesn't understand why the cheese is free.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought that was so good.
Yeah,
If things are free, you're heading into a trap.
yeah.
So there are a lot of competitors out there that giving out the free cheese. All right. So having values, principles, being clear is kind, being vulnerable as a leader. And she spends a lot of time towards the end of the book talking about having trust. She outlines how trust is built in small moments through behaviors like reliability, integrity, competence, showing up every day. So trust is something that's built over time. It's like these little series, mini decisions that you're making as a leader with an employee and with clients every single day, and it can evaporate in a second. So trust takes a long time to build, and it's like your reputation is everything. Your reputation is your commodity. That's what you trade in, is who you are as a person. So she spends a lot of time talking about building trust, retaining it, and leaders need to be aware of how their example builds trust within the team. So as a leader, you're up on that pedestal, and you have to be that example, but recognizing to your team that I'm going to make mistakes, and when I do, I'm going to own them. You can't just gloss over your own mistakes and expect perfection from your team. So,
Can I just say one thing about the consistency? I was
yeah,
listening
please.
to listening to a podcast, and Dr. Lane Norton was on it. He's a power lifter, and he's just always all about consistency, like as far as lifting weights, just like, and he quoted somebody. I don't know who gave the quote, but I loved it. It was something to the effect of, "The magic you're looking for is in the work you are trying to avoid."
Ooh,
And it was just great. Like anyway, I love that one, just because it's like there's no secrets, right? Like it's or not no secret. There's no magic bullet. You just the magic you're looking for is in the work you're trying to avoid. So
yeah,
that's what you reminded me about, it, consistency.
I love that. We tend to gravitate towards the easy things, but
Yeah,
it's
the
the hard
hacks. We
thing.
gotta. What's the hack,
Yeah,
right?
the hack, but it's that deep hard work,
Yeah, that
that
just that consistency that
the long road. That's where
yeah, and
the
he was
growth is.
yeah, he was essentially saying like, even if you're not perfect, if you're consistent, like you're going to be so much further ahead than somebody who's, perfect every other time, or
Yeah.
every once in a while. So,
Yeah. And that's where learning comes from. It comes from iterating and being consistent.
yeah.
Like my working out last week, I was out of town. So I did a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, perfect workouts for me.
Hmm.
Was out of town Thursday, Friday. Today's Saturday, and I was working on another project this morning. So I missed 3 of my 6 workouts. So it's not as consistent.
Sure. But I mean, consistency could be 3 days a week, 2 days a week. You know what I mean? Like you kind of decide
Yeah.
that. So
I'll be back at it on
yeah,
Monday.
yeah.
Like we start another week and try to get to 6 workouts a week with this maniac. Uh,
Is he the guy with the cold pool? Is that the guy with the cold pool
we did
in
the
his
he did
house?
he
Oh,
talked me
the
into doing the ice
ice tub.
plunge.
Yeah,
Yeah. But he's
nice.
not I think he's pretty realistic. When you are working out with somebody who's been doing it for a long time,
Yeah,
it's easy to look at somebody and say, "Gal, they can't lift any weight." That's probably how he feels working out with me, but he's being patient.
yeah,
And I think that's good in business too, is having mentors that will work with you and train you and teach you.
yeah,
Like you're
yeah.
teaching
You can
me
only
how to
start where you're at.
podcast
Yeah.
every that's
All right. What was
exactly
the
right.
what's the last principle? I interrupted
So
you.
last principle is courage over comfort. So this means having difficult conversations, making tough decisions, being willing to risk failure in pursuit of meaningful goals. And in business, you have to have courage. You have to take risks. You don't want to take foolish risks. You want to calculate before you jump, uh, obviously, but you can't just stay in a blanket of comfort because if you do, your business is dying, your career is dying. You have to keep pushing yourself to do that thing that's a little bit scary, jump into the next lily pad in growth. So this week, I had a deal that I was working on, and I thought the deal was done, and it wasn't done. I was told there are there's other competitors in the mix
Hmm.
now.
Yeah.
And I was like, inside of me, I'm like, I don't want to compete. you know?
I thought we were done here.
Yeah, I thought we were finished. And so I'm with my colleague, we're driving down and I had like no time to put this so I was just like finding gaps of time to put this proposal back together. And in the back of your mind, you're just full of fear, you're full of anxiety, like I thought this was done, it's not
Hmm.
done, and now I've got all of these 10 other things in this proposal that I need to build, and I want to build them well. So on the drive, I'm sitting in the passenger side, just, typing away and refining and calling people. What do you think of this? What do you think of that? And, um, finally hit submit. And, they responded very quickly that we were in the top of those that were evaluated, which I was really excited about. But they're even now, 20 years in, it's like it still takes courage. You have to get out there and do tough deals because sometimes you don't win them, and it's that's not fun. But you have to keep kind of sharpening your sword, keep evaluating yourself. Like, are we good? Are we what we think we are in our head? And so you have to really try and extend yourself into some of these opportunities that you might think are way above your skill level, and sometimes you're going to get rejected, because I've certainly had a lot of those too. But so courage over comfort and kind of leading your team out of comfort. That's one thing I try to push our team to do: things that aren't comfortable, learn new skills that aren't comfortable, take tests that are kind of a pain you have to study for, and those are hard, but that creates growth. So that was the last principle in her book, or that principle is actually a little bit earlier in the book, called Courage Over Comfort. So
So
uh, yeah.
that reminded me of I took it in a different way, or at least it reminded me of there was a time back when I managed quite a few people. Uh, the courage we were not courageous. There was a guy who we needed to let go, and for
Mm,
kind of political reasons, we let him stick around for a long time when we shouldn't
Oh,
have.
yes.
And that's what it reminded me of. It's like, okay, we should have just been courageous and like been ready to deal with the fallout that would have been there, because it was it was just a waste of time, like
His time too.
his time, my time, the whole business's time. It was just dumb. And that's kind of what it reminded me of, is like, okay, sometimes the courage is not the fun thing you want to do. You know what I mean? It's
Yeah.
something that should be done. That's best. What's best. Actually, I had another good mentor or boss that said, what's best. He would always just ask, what's best for the business. Um,
Yeah.
and that was, anyway. It also reminds me a little bit of some of the complacency that I see with potential clients when they know that, and I'm not going to get into details of what we do, but what we offer, they know it's better, and they know that they're going to have a better product because of what we offer, but
Mm.
they're a little bit complacent. They're like, it's going to take a little dev work. I'm not sure, like, okay, but we're less expensive and better. Like, you're very complacent right now. And it's like, you be courageous. Like, just, it's the right thing to do. But anyway, whatever.
And sometimes for a buyer, that means, Matt is better.
Mm-hmm.
And we know that we've done the due diligence, but that means
Right.
I'm going to have to go have a difficult conversation with our current vendor who I've been buying from for 10 or
Yeah.
15
Yeah.
years,
Exactly.
or with my
Exactly.
boss that has to approve the budget for this thing that I think is going to
Yeah.
accelerate our business. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's such a good point, Matt, because a lot of businesses stagnate on that principle of not having the courage to do what needs to be done.
Yeah, there's the reason, and again, not to get into details. The reason that I work at this company, the reason they started the company, is the complacency at the place they were at before, and they said we can do this way better, and the company's like, why? We're fine. We make money. Like, why do we need to get better? And
Yeah.
so they're like, you know what? Well, we're doing this better. We're just going to go out there and build it better. So anyway, it's just kind of interesting.
I've always just believed if you're not growing, if you're not building, you're dying.
Yeah, for sure.
And if you don't have just some massive, huge goal that isn't doesn't even seem realistic, then what are you doing?
Yeah.
You're just kind of maintaining, and over time, there's always somebody that's hungrier than you, that's
Hmm.
smarter than you, and see if you have that imaginary competitor in your mind, it's like, no, I'm going to outwork him today.
Yeah.
He's not going to win today.
You know what? It's funny. Sorry, and I know this is maybe a tangent, but I remember. Did I tell you? I don't know if I said this on the podcast, but I remember when I was a kid and there was a guy. Did I tell you this about a guy from the local grocery store came and talked to us about like careers and resumes? Did I tell
No,
you
no,
this?
I
Okay.
haven't heard this story.
Okay, so I was like in junior high or something, right? And this guy comes and talks to me. He works at a grocery store, right? Like, this is not a big deal. And he comes in and he says, "Hey, it was some sort of career type of class. I don't know what it was." And he's talking about how he gets all these resumes, and some of them are kind of scribbled together. This is back in the day when you used to write, not a resume, application.
Sure.
We used to write on an application, right? And he's like, you need to be print this, and it has to be, the best, legible thing you can write, like. And he's like, it's, and he was saying how competitive it is to work like as a stock boy or something at this grocery store. And for some reason, it really resonated with me. Like, oh man, it's a competitive world. I gotta, be the best when I interview. I gotta have the best resume, present myself the best way. And that was just kind of my mentality, my whole life growing up. And when I graduated, I remember I was interviewing at a place, and the guy I was interviewing with said, "Oh, we're hoping to hire 5 people." And he's like, "Yeah." And I met him at a career fair, so I thought, "Oh, he probably has a ton of resumes." And I remember this kind of reminded me of this guy from the grocery store. And I'm like, "Okay, I got to be in the top 5. There is no way I'm not in the top 5. Like, like if there's 30, 40 applicants, I guarantee I'm in the top 5." Anyway, I get the offer. I go work there, and the first day, I'm the only person they hired. And I was like shocked. I'm like, "I thought you were hiring 5 people."
Oh,
And they're like, "Well, we wanted to, but we didn't really find anybody, that we really like besides you." Blah blah blah. And I'm like, "Oh." And then as I progressed my career and I started interviewing people, I'm like, there's actually a lot of dumb people out in the world. No offense, people, but
sure, sure.
there's a lot of people who don't try, who aren't as competitive or like want to get better. They just want a job. They kind of just
Yeah,
slide through life. And I'm like, and I there is still competition that's still in the back of my mind, but I'm like there's a lot of people out there who don't try very hard.
yeah,
And if you can just be that much hungrier and that work that much harder, you just have such a huge advantage over people. Does that make sense? Like,
it totally does.
it just kind of changed my perspective, right? Like,
I would say it, or maybe I would add to that idea that you always want to be on the bleeding edge of your skill level.
yeah,
Like you have this comfort zone and you want to be right on the edge, not over. Like if somebody said, it wouldn't be smart for me to tell somebody, oh, I'll program an app for you next week.
right.
Just, it's not even anywhere in my edge or in my circle of competence.
Right.
But I know where those edges are.
Yeah.
And if I'm always living on that edge, pushing that boundary just a little bit, growing that and expanding that, that's what I think clients expect and employers expect. But
Yeah.
you're right. There's a lot of people that just want to stay, this is what I know.
Yeah.
I'm going to stay right here, but you're shrinking. Your muscles are atrophying. You're
It,
not growing. You're
it
just
reminds me of like the government worker. Like, I'm not getting fired. I work for the government. Who cares? You know, that's what it reminds me of. And no offense to our government workers that do work hard, but
yeah. No.
from what I've seen, it's like they just don't have a lot of passion or caring. And
Yeah. So I mean, I know there are those
but
in
that happens
government.
in
Yeah.
private as well.
Oh,
Like that, I've seen it in the
oh,
private. Like,
yeah. Yeah.
oh, I can slide by. Nobody cares what I do as long as I keep under the radar. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
it's
I had an old boss that used to say when he was a big into cycling.
mm-hmm,
And he said to me once, he's like, cotton kills. If you wear cotton when you're cycling, it will just rub you raw and
mm-hmm,
hurt. And I've done some half marathons and a half Ironman or whatever. And so I always remembered cotton kills. Like, don't ever
mm-hmm,
wear cotton if you're working out because it's just going to rub you. But I'm going to change it a little bit. Comfort kills
mm-hmm.
in our industries. Comfort
Yep,
will just slowly suffocate you to death, and
yep.
you'll feel comfortable as you're quietly going on to the machines that breathe for you until until someone finally pulls a plug. So don't get comfortable, live on the bleeding edge.
Yeah.
Um, I'm outside of the bounds of Brené's book. She didn't talk about any of this stuff, but
No,
you
I know.
got me
That was
going.
that was a tangent. I'm sorry,
You got me going
but
today. So I would rate the book. I think it was probably a solid triple with an RBI. And the
okay.
reason why I wouldn't give it a home run is I think there were some areas where it maybe got a little bit into her own. And again, the book's not about her. She shares a lot of personal experiences, but I felt like there were some areas where it felt a little tiny political, or
Mm.
there was a little bit of cultural stuff in there that I thought
This is not necessary for like a
wasn't necessary for the book.
leadership book. Yeah, I
Exactly.
hate that. I'm actually
There's a
listening to a book.
little bit of that in there, and I was like, okay. Um, that it didn't add to the book. To me, it would kind of like detracted, where I was like, okay, skip, skip, skip.
Right,
Like
right.
fast forward past this part. And everybody has their own values and principles and things like that. But I think sometimes when authors go over into the political, it's like not helpful for people that maybe don't align with your own political
I'm listening to a book
philosophy.
right now, and same thing. She kind of starts with this, and this, and I'm like really, it's just not necessary, right? Like, I don't know. And
Yeah. So,
obviously they think it's necessary because they put it in there, but
but
I just disagree.
yeah, I would say it's definitely a book that will go on my shelf. I'll own it. I think it's a great book. Um, Again, you just have to kind of filter through those things, and like an eagle hunting the prey.
And it reminds me of the books I don't like when they try to be funny and they're not really funny. Okay, just you made you make the point. There's no reason to try and make a bad joke about it, right? Like some of the
Right.
science books that I've read, I'm like, okay, dude, like that's you're not a comedian. Let's just
Where,
let's stick to the comedy thing.
like, where's the
Jokes are
editor?
certain.
Where was
Yeah,
the editor on this one?
yeah, like I don't know, whatever.
All
All right. Well, that's
right.
about it. Thanks everyone for listening to the podcast. And this was kind of an interesting one. Dare to Lead and Becoming a Supple Leopard, quite the eclectic mix we got. We try to keep it fresh for you guys. Thanks to Deja Vega for letting us use their music. Go check them out. Thanks everyone for listening to the podcast. Like, subscribe, share. If you want to be a guest, let us know. And thanks again for listening to the Pitchbook podcast.